Very good afternoon, everyone. I hope all of you had a good A-Late examination and are all geared up for CLAT 2020. I thought we'll today give you some last-minute hacks, some last-minute tips in terms of what you need to keep in mind. First of all, start with a fresh mind and all of that. So let's jump right into it. Um, at Gradeup, we are of course going to be doing the analysis for the CLAT exam, including the predictions for the cutoffs. We'll discuss some actual questions and so on. So do join us 5:30 p.m. onwards at the Gradeup platform, including we'll be streaming it on YouTube, etc. as well. For those of you who are, of course, looking to give the examination later on, do stay tuned in for today's session in any case, but you can of course upgrade to the Gradeup Super and take up if you're preparing for 2022, then you have the 24-month program, you have the 12-month program, and of course the crash course for some of the other examinations that are still pending. Examination date, of course, is 28th of September. I hope it's not a reminder. It's just don't mix up the dates. It's something you should really be careful about. The examination starts at 2 p.m. So do show up on time. Remember the slot is not a 3 to 5 p.m. examination, which is what usually happens. It's not on a Sunday. It is tomorrow itself. So just be careful about these tests. Of course, is this time because of the COVID and so on. It is of course an online examination. Just a quick reminder for the entire structure. It's a 2-hour examination. So the total time is 120 minutes. There are no sectional times, so you can take up whatever time suits you in terms of the distribution, etc. We will, of course, in the course of today's session itself, I will be talking about what is the estimated time you should take per section, per question, and so on. There's +1 for every correct answer, and there's a -0.25 for every incorrect answer. So I would suggest that guessing still, if you're reasonably having a doubt between probably 2 options or so on, then guessing still works because it's only 0.25 negative marking. The English section is going to be 28 to 32 questions, which means the proportional number of marks is exactly the same as the number of questions, right? It's 1 mark per question. So a total of 150 marks the whole paper is going to be. Current affairs, including general knowledge, is primarily going to be dominated. The general knowledge section is primarily going to be dominated by current affairs, as you've seen in the sample papers and so on. So we expect 35 to 39 questions. Legal reasoning is going to be between 25 to 39 questions. Again, we expect it should be around 35 odd questions per se. Between GK and legal put together, it should be approximately half the question paper, right? So 75 marks should be between legal and GK. Logical reasoning is again pretty much the same as the English section, so it's 28 to 32 marks, and quantitative aptitude or mathematics is basically going to be between 13 to 17 marks. So I hope all of you are clear on that. What are the mandatory things that you must carry for being allowed to give the examination? Remember to carry these things. There is of course the admit card along with the declaration. There has to be a valid original ID proof. So you can, of course, I assume a lot of you may not have a PAN card, but I'm again assuming everybody has an Aadhaar card. If you are driving, I always recommend have your own goddamn driving license as well. If you're participating in the grand democratic process of India, then of course you have to be carrying a voter ID, right? No voice. How is that possible? Am I audible to everyone else? Just want to do a quick check. Have you muted it at your own end, perhaps, Priyanka? Could you check? Because everything seems to be fine at my end. Yeah, okay. Okay. Sir, perfectly audible. Okay. So Priyanka, you need to check. I think you probably muted or your speakers are off when one way or the other. Sir, in the guidelines, they didn't tell us about how we solve reasoning questions. We need a notebook for that. I'm coming to it. You'll be given blank sheets along with rough sheets for your rough work. And if you don't, if you need more sheets also, they will be providing you with rough sheets. But I'm coming to it. You also need to carry a passport size photograph. And if you're claiming any reservation like person with disability, then you should have a PWD certificate with you. Well, the ballpoint pen, it's obvious the examination is still the examination is still computer based, but for your rough work, etc., you should be carrying a ball pen which is blue in color, and the pen should be transparent, so that you're not carrying chits, etc., inside the pen, right? So just keep that in mind. And of course, because of coronavirus, you need to have a self-health declaration. So please make those forms, get those documents ready, and don't mess it up on the day of the examination. You are of course allowed to carry, right? So that's mandatory that you must carry. I would, and at Gradeup we recommend that you in any case don't forget to carry a water bottle, because it's still pretty much a midsummer kind of situation here, and of course because of COVID, please carry a hand sanitizer. What are the prohibited stuff? What are you not allowed to carry? Do not take with you any electronic device such as a mobile phone, calculator. So if for those of you who are having an Apple Watch, etc., you're not allowed to carry that either, right? So shoes, footwear, anything with thick things that you can hide stuff, right? Those things are absolutely prohibited, along with garments which have large buttons. So just wear a normal shirt or a t-shirt and go give your examination, focus on solving the paper. So I think somebody was asking, you will be provided with blank paper sheets for your rough work, and you will be provided additional sheets if required by you. So that shouldn't be a problem. In terms of our recommendations, we strongly suggest that you reach the examination at least an hour before the beginning. So be there around 12:30, 1 o'clock, right? So that you acquaint yourself with the situation and surroundings and so on. Computer-based examination, yes, but still, like in and around and so on, there should not be any traffic problems. It could be all kinds of Murphy's Law. I don't know if you've heard about it. Everything that can go wrong will go wrong. So be on the safe side, reach on time. God knows what unforeseen event might be coming your way, right? So be there specifically on time. The candidates must keep the admit card for CLAT 2020 safe until the examination as well as the admission process is over. So once you step out of the examination, don't throw away your admit card that I am done. Finally, this examination which I've been waiting for from May to pretty much October borderline is finally over. So don't start throwing it away. You need it for the admission process as well. Right? So keep them. There are of course a few COVID-19 instructions, right? So in terms of your instructions that have already been provided to you by the CLAT consortium, please go check the website. Whatever are the specific requirements, of course we've already told you. You will be offered a fresh 3-ply mask before entry, right? So you will be given a mask for yourself. You have to remove the mask worn from home and use the mask provided at the center only, right? So but do wear a mask from home and have a self-health declaration. What about the self-declaration? Yeah, it's a declaration form where you have to say that you are not having any COVID symptoms at the current time, right? And that you have not faced any such problem, that you're not COVID positive, and so on and so forth. That's the self-declaration that you need to carry with yourself. It's a mandatory document, so do not forget it. Definitely do not forget it. After the end of the examination, no candidates will be permitted to leave the examination hall before the end of the examination, right? So even if you finish the examination, please make sure you're sitting there quietly. The idea is we don't want somebody to simply finish off the examination, go and start leaking the paper and this and that. So you'll have to sit through the entire period of the examination. You have to drop your rough sheets in a designated box. So you can, of course, there will be people to help you out with that. But so you're not allowed to carry the rough sheet outside with you. You'll have to drop it off in the designated box, right? So keep that also in mind. The CLAT 2020 is going to be quite a tough competition because there are more than 70,000 people who have applied. We expect at least 55,000 people to be giving the paper, and as you know, there are about 2,600 seats in the 22 national law universities, and there are only 520 plus seats in the top 5 NLUs. But of course, you need to figure out your one seat in the top 55, which is NLS Bangalore, right? CLAT 2020 time management, like I said, I'll take you through what you should be. I'm assuming a lot of you have already been giving mocks. All of you have been giving no sir, it's not 2350. The number of seats have increased. A lot of colleges have increased their number of seats also, right? So keep that in mind. Now I'm sure all of you have already been giving mocks, etc., so you already have a sense of how much time you should be taking per section. There are no sectional timings, right? So it's not like if you've not finished English within the first 25 minutes, then the section itself is shut off. Some examinations do, but the CLAT doesn't have that. So that's not the reason, but it's how you need to pace yourself, because you have to wrap up the examination in a period of 2 hours in any case, right? So current affairs and including the GK section should not take you more than 25 minutes in under pretty much any circumstance, I would think. You should ideally finish it much faster, in my opinion, actually. English language is, again, you should be wrapping it up in about 25, maximum 30 minutes. The legal reasoning section and logical reasoning sections are going to be a little time heavy, right? Because both of them have a number of questions and you have to solve them and so on. So it should take you a little more time, like 30 minutes and 30 minutes approximately, for both the legal and logical reasoning sections. And the mathematics section, given that the number of questions has also gone down, you should be able to wrap it up in about 10 to 15 minutes, depending on how good you are at maths. You can probably finish it off in 10-11 minutes. Even if you're slow, don't be taking more than 15-16. So the idea is you should be wrapping up reasoning questions in a maximum slot of 1 minute to 1.15 minutes, let's say, and you should be solving the information based questions like grammar questions in the English section, or the GK questions quite a bit faster, because there's no application of mind. It's just whether you know or you don't know the answer. Right. Now what should be the order of attempting the question paper? Primarily, you should already be knowing what you are good at and what you are bad at. Now, of course, you're not supposed to be bad at any of these sections, right? But there are some sections where you're more confident in your preparation. So ideally, always start with the section that you're strongest at. Now, if it was an offline paper, I would have suggested that you start with question number 1 and then chronologically simply move to question number 150 and wrap up your examination. But because otherwise you're flipping papers, and then in the OMR also it can get confusing. Question number 7 you are marking first, then question number 12. So it just sort of becomes a little bit of a problem. But when it comes to a computer based test, right, what you should remember is, because you can choose which section to click and then start on, I would strongly suggest that you start with whatever is the section that you are most confident in, right? So you have a whole confidence going on throughout the paper. You already have a heavy section that you've taken care of, right? It's a feel good, continuing feel good factor, which you will be able to sail through the whole paper, and which you'll be carrying with yourself for the whole paper. On the other hand, say your maths is horrible and you start with the math section, you've already feeling underconfident, you already screwed up the whole mental framework that you should be approaching the paper. So always start with whatever is the strongest and leave the weakest section for the very end. Keeping in mind the toughness level and the time management, following is the ideal order of attempting the sections. If you don't already have a plan in place, right, what we would suggest is you could start with current affairs followed by legal reasoning, because with this technique you'll be attempting around half of the questions in very quick time, right? Because current affairs, again, it's a GK section, right? So either you know the answer or you don't know the answer, so you've already knocked off quite a few marks, and you can then focus on the primarily reasoning dominated sections, right? Rest all 3 sections are pretty much dependent on your strengths and weaknesses. Yutika's question is, what is the safe score, sir? It will really depend on the difficulty of the question paper. But so if it's a really tough paper, then I would think in and around like early 90s or even late 80s should be a good and decent score. But if the paper is really easy, we expect the top 3 to 5 colleges cutoff can soar as high as say 120 marks. But again, for that, I think the much better day would be tomorrow evening when you join us for the analysis, 5:30 p.m. onwards on Gradeup, right? Okay. All of you already know this, but just a quick reminder, the nature of questions is entirely, it is going to be passage based, right? There are going to be, every section is going to have reading comprehensions, and from the reading comprehensions, you'll have your questions, whether it is even in the GK section or in the legal section. You don't have principal facts anymore. GK questions are not one-liners anymore. You will have to go through the passage. So I hope all of you already prepared in terms of practicing as many reading comprehensions as you can. All of you really pushed up your reading speeds as much as you can, right? And you're all set for tomorrow. Which exam is difficult, Dinesh? Either CLAT or MHCET? Well, so how I look at it is between, it's not the difficulty of question paper that really makes an examination difficult. What makes an examination difficult is the competition that you face in the examination. So if, for example, if the CLAT paper is extremely easy also, right, the only difference will be that the cutoff will be extremely high. So 2015 CLAT, for example, was one of the toughest in the history of the entire, I think, NLS Bangalore, including everything, like 30 years, it was probably one of the toughest paper of all time. So the cutoff for NLS Bangalore top 55 was 117 marks only. 2016 paper, the year immediately after 2015, it was probably the easiest CLAT in the history of law entrances. And because the paper was extremely easy, that made no difference because it's still the top 55 students who are going to qualify, right? So, sorry, what ended up happening is that the cutoff for NLS Bangalore was more than 160 marks, right? So it was more than a 45 mark gap, almost a 50 mark gap in terms of the change in cutoff, right? So now which exam has more competition is basically what makes an examination difficult, right? So Dinesh, I would think because the CLAT is more number of applications, more people giving the paper, it gives you access to all the national law schools except for National University Delhi, right? So CLAT of course is going to be more difficult, and it won't really matter whether the paper is easy or difficult, right? So just keep that in mind. MHCET of course continues to follow the previous pattern, right? So again, just a quick overview of the nature of questions. The English passages are going to be about 450 words each, given what we have seen in the sample papers. The current affairs passages are going to be slightly shorter, right? And we expect the passages to be 250 to 300 words, again based on the sample papers that you would have seen. Logical reasoning and legal reasoning. Legal reasoning is going to be as big as the English reading comprehensions of 450 words, and logical reasoning again is going to be the smaller format of the passages, which is 300 words, right? In the quantitative techniques, we don't have direct mathematical questions anymore. We have pie charts and short graphs and text and pictorial depictions, etc., from which you have to derive the information and then sort of figure out the answers given the respective questions, right? Okay, so again, how would you attempt the paper, right? So as you already know, the paper is very reading oriented. So first read the passage and questions carefully. Try to attempt 2-3 questions in one passage. Out of the 5 questions, there might be easy, moderate and tough questions. So your aim is to do at least 2 to 3 questions out of the 5 questions in a particular passage, right? So we are assuming that if there are 2 extremely tough questions also, at least 3 out of 5 you should really be knocking it out of the system. This will increase your chances obviously to qualify the paper. And don't spend too much time on any one question, right? Because the paper is very time sensitive. It is a very time sensitive paper. You have 150 questions and 120 minutes, which means you have less than 1 minute per question, right? So definitely don't waste your time. If you think some question is taking you a lot of time, let it go, move on to the next question, right? So stay calm and start with basically reading the instructions. That could be, you know, read the questions carefully. There could be an instruction saying which of the following is not required or which of the following is required, and so on. So read the questions, read the instructions very carefully. Now, because there is a negative marking, we always recommend that you should avoid any guessing, but you know, because the negative is slightly low in terms of weightage, I would also suggest that if you're completely sure that at least 2 options are for sure wrong and you have very minute confusion about A or B, then sometimes it might be okay to actually guess. Because if you guess 1 out of 3 questions right also, or even 1 out of 4 questions, that still gives you a plus 0.25 out of the 4 questions, right? Because 3 questions negative marking will be minus 0.75, and if you get 1 right, out of the 4 guesses, then you still get a +1, which is overall a plus 0.25. Out of 5 questions also, if you guess 1 correct, you still don't lose any marks, because 4 questions negative mark will be -1 and 1 correct answer will give you the +1, right? Now, if you're not able to guess 1 out of 5 correctly also when you're confused about only 2 options, then don't blame me. You're really horrible at guessing, right? So I don't think anybody will be normally that bad at guessing, right? So but when I say guessing, what I mean is you should be sure that at least 2 of these options are completely wrong. You should have the confusion between only 2 options, right? If you have a confusion in all 4 options, then be humble and accept that you don't know the answer, right? Charo option, if you have a doubt, then that means you don't know the answer. That's not guessing. That is literally leaving it to the fate of God and the kindness and the mercy and the benevolence of the great lords, right? So that's not the idea. Okay, what are the do's and don'ts during the examination? Starting 15 minutes are extremely important, because like I said, like we've already told you, that's why you should start with your strongest section, because you'll be settled, your nerves will be calm, and pacing yourself throughout the examination will become much easier, right? Don't rush through the questions, don't put over pressure on yourself. Keeping calm and attacking every single question one at a time is extremely important. It will increase the chances of making silly mistakes if you put over pressure on yourself. Don't keep looking at the clock every 1 minute or every 2 minutes thinking, oh my god, time is running out, oh my god, time is running out. That should not be the approach, right? You should stay calm while you're going through the examination. Don't get stuck in any questions for too long. Make sure you don't miss questions that you think are solvable, which is why I said every single question should be independently attacked, right? Make your time during the examination and manage your time in accordance with the guidelines, with the generic instructions, etc., that we have already given you. Don't lose confidence if you're not able to solve some questions in a row. It happens, it's okay. Maybe the next 10 questions you'll get 10 out of 10, right? So it's possible that 2-3 questions at a stretch you could not solve. If you go into panic mode, you are done, right? So do not panic. It is extremely important that you keep your calm. Preparation is one thing, right? But when you're actually in the examination hall, what is that famous dialogue from Chuck there, right? He is 75 minutes, nobody can steal from you. So whatever, same logic. Nobody's going to take away these 120 minutes. It is all yours, but it is for you not to screw it up, right? So if you get 3 questions in a row wrong, you don't know a few answers, that's okay. Roll up your sleeves, put your head down and continue with the question paper. Don't panic, don't lose confidence. Just make sure you don't pick the questions you're not confident in about the first hour, right? So that's why I start with the strongest section. Last and most important of all, stay calm, don't panic, and trust the hard work that you've put. Those of you who've not put in the hard work, sorry, it's too late, right? Okay, please maintain speed and accuracy in terms of the examination. During the online examination, the 2 most important factors are speed and obviously accuracy, right? So get as many questions as you can. You should get a shot at it. Ideally, because the CLAT examination is time sensitive, but for those of you who prepared and worked hard, you should be able to go through all 150 questions. You may not know the answers to all the 150 questions, but you can definitely take a good shot at every question, and you know which one I don't know and which one I know. Remember that high speed with less accuracy is the most dangerous thing, right? So if you've run through the whole paper in about 1 hour, but your accuracy is horrible, you'll get more negative marks. You'll not be getting more right answers. So pace yourself throughout the paper. Remember the time breakups that we have discussed. Remember that you should not be taking too long for one question, but at the same time, you should not be rushing through the paper as well. If your speed is slow while attending the questions, then always try to ensure that attempt every question with 100% accuracy. Now, I believe that speed is extremely important, so your speed should not be slow. But for those of you who've still not been able to push up your speed as much, then at least make sure that the questions that you're attempting, the sections that you're beginning with and choosing and so on, you have as much accuracy as possible in all of those questions, right? This will increase your chances of obviously qualifying the paper. Please make the chat to public mode last day. Oh, I don't actually put it off or on, but feel free, guys. uh, Done, Isha, I have already done it. Okay, be confident, believe in yourself. As much as we might believe in you, it is extremely important that you believe in yourself, right? And therefore attempt the paper in that spirit. The ongoing courses that we currently have, for those of you who have other papers after tomorrow as well, we do have the CLAT 2021 comprehensive course for those of you who are giving it in the next year. There is the score booster for the Maharashtra CET examination. There are some important upcoming courses, including for ALED, for MHCET, for the symbiosis law aptitude test, and so on and so forth. Right. So all the very best, guys. We have the free sessions and the free series that already on your app, that you have access to. Do take a quick peek at all the important things that you think need to be brushed up, like how many total number of amendments or how many total number of articles currently in the constitution, and so on and so forth. Right, keep a track of all of those things, and do join us tomorrow evening from 5:30 p.m. onwards for the analysis. And all the very best for the examination. I hope you don't need my best wishes, but your preparation is already up to mark. But take my best wishes just in case. I hope you get all the possible best luck as well in terms of getting the questions that you have specifically prepared for. All the very best, guys, and I'll see most of you tomorrow evening.